And obviously in some of your pieces, like with the war veteran in Manchester, it's a one-to-one encounter. So then 2 is a company, and I think in English one says 2 is a company, 3 is a crowd. And there are obviously these pieces of yours which are really crowd pieces. There is the 430 Peru piece where you basically hired 430 people. I mean, you didn't hire them individually, you hired a crowd. There is also 465 at the Rufina Tamayo Museum in Mexico, again a crowd. Can you tell us about these moments when it becomes a crowd?
Sí. Well, in Spain existed too. This possibility existed I remember during the Franco times, no? Well, I remember. I know about that. I was not so. But on that time, if you want to fill the square where Franco was giving a talk, everybody knows that it was all the province of Spain filling buses with people for with something to eat and some money. No? And in Mexico they do that, no? For example, to grow in demonstration of governmental parties or things like that. No? With this idea of fill with crowds and pay for a crowd, I organized 2 pieces using very different methodologies, because in Mexico I used a private agency. And then we pay the private agency, and they say we need 1 people for square meters, and they fill it, but they make a lot of irregularities. They, for example, put in the exhibition room a battalion of soldiers, or they put me a complete school of children that are not allowed to work. So many things occur, but at the end we have at the beginning 400, and then the crowd was disappearing. And in Peru was different, because in Peru exists a program called Glass of Milk, and it's a program to bring some food or primary food or primary things to the low classes, and they give it to women, but the women have to fill the acts of the political party who keeps the apportations, no? And it was what I did in Peru, in Lima.
And these pieces obviously have a limited lifespan. They're kind of defined over a certain duration. They're durational pieces, and often the duration is the duration of the show. It's the number of weeks the show takes, or the number of hours. It can also
usually I use this model, that is, we open in the evening, this part of the evening of history is 2 parts. I don't know, it depends of the concentration, but many people you cannot have it for a long time with a big light, no? Like a TV or something in front. If you keep them just for the money, they will leave the room.
And then some pieces are permanent. I mean, there is, for example, the 160 centimeter line tattoo. That tattoo, stays. And when I watched this again this morning, I was actually thinking kind of also about your earlier pieces, like the bread line, no? And because the 160 meter line could almost be a sort of a Stanley Brown idea, to have a line of 160 centimeters. And if one thinks about the bread line, that was obviously Carl Andre. Can you maybe talk a little bit about this? Like, for example, with the tattoo piece and how it also connects to conceptual art.
See, well, the funny thing with the lines is that is the length, no? How long they are, and they have no more interesting thing, no? Apparently, no? And that's why I use it, because it's an empty glass where I can put whatever I want. Of course, if I put 4 people and I make a dragon instead of a line, I'm telling a different story. But if I'm making just a line, I'm saying that I'm doing the minimum gesture to provoke a social relation that we are having, in which somebody is paid and somebody gets tattooed and somebody gets photographed. So it's the minimum expression, and that's why I like it. No? I think I'm a great lover of the form of minimalist, but for sure I'm a big enemy of them for the lack of contents, or at least because the contents refers too much to the moment of the industry, or refers too much to the ignorance of the problems that generated at this moment of the industry, So I like a lot minimal art, but I work with them like a little bit like an enemy. an enemy that I admire, deeply admire.
So it's a kind of a paradox, but obviously another connection is also Joseph Beuys, I suppose. I mean, many of your pieces connect somehow to idea of a social sculpture, and the piece which maybe you often mention has directly to do with Joseph Beuys and also with Fostel, is this Stromheim piece in 2004, which you did. And that's certainly, of all your pieces, the piece which became most public. I mean, it created an absolutely public mainstream discussion for many, many weeks in Germany and beyond. So I was wondering if you can tell us a little bit about this work and how it connects to Beuys, to social sculpture, to Fostel, to Fluxus.
Oh, okay. See, well, they offered me the synagogue space, and not for the first time. Other artists went there, like Carl André or the one who made the Google drawing. Sorry, Lewitz, many people, no? But I found that there is a limit to talk about that. That there is it's created a certain aesthetic that should be respect, and if you cross and you don't use the same aesthetic, the people can get very mad, no? And the aesthetic is just to bring flowers from the side of the artist or from the side of the movies to show how bad is everybody, no? In my case, I decided to take the offer thinking in the generation of Germans that is precisely the generation as a global artist that I'm more like, which is Fostel, Eva Hess, el mismo Joseph Beuys, and others, and to bring them in the piece, no? Is in the piece you can see it's a motor. There's different motors in the different points of the street, and I was putting the fumes of the cars inside the synagogue, no? Which is an idea taken from Gustav Metzel, we live here in London, and also affected for this war situation in his own life, and it's a simple copy. I remember these fumes where he put the fumes in the aquarium, but not full of fishes, but full of plants, and the plants die. And also the way of Eva Hesse of presenting the tubes, because the Eva Hesse have this sensibility to create a minimalism alive, no? With subtle differences between objects, create something different than minimalist. And he was also a person very affected for that. The bomb of milk, obviously we have a motor working, and I was thinking in the bomb of milk of Joseph Beuys. And all the general presentation was completely close to Fostel's presentation, the collage when he created these situations of panic, no? in the middle of the actions, no? Making believe the people that what you are seeing is much more worse than what is in the reality. The piece was very well accepted for the public who was there, and for the art scene, but it was very easy to create a confrontation. No? It's as easy as to take a phone call and to say, look, a radical is is attacking the synagogue. No? Then you cannot talk anymore. You can say nothing, because when the conversation starts in these levels, you have to shut up and wait your moment to explain yourself. No?
I know there are so many more questions. We should open it maybe to the floor. I've got one last question for you, which is about your unrealized projects. Obviously, Rainer Maria Rilke famously, talked about this, but that leads also to the very, very last question. But before that, sort of, projects which have been too big to be realized, too small to be realized, projects which were, particularly in your case, because you so often test limits. I was also wondering if there are any projects which maybe have been censored, or even, Doris Lessing said, if we talk about unrealized projects, there are also the projects which are self-censored, projects which maybe we, didn't yet dare to do. The whole complex of the unbuilt kind of Santiago Sierra.
But I lost your question. Sorry. So
unrealized.
Unrealized project. You asked me the last time too.
Exactly.
But the thing is,
I always ask this question. It's my only recurrent question.
But, well, I will respond you more or less the same, but it's like to ask Casanova for the women that he couldn't get, no? It's something like my unrealized projects, I probably the 80% of the projects are unrealized or I cannot go ahead with them, no? And also when I realize a project, it's not my project anymore because I had to negotiate and I had to accept the introduction of the reality in my own idea and become something else. So I think for me it's common, no? Not realizing projects. I don't get very depressed, I go to the next one. So it's normal. And about censorship, censorship I consider a very heavy word. We have to take in consideration that many times what people looks like censor is a disagreement between the people inside the institution, disagreements that probably talking can be resolved. If they cannot resolve talking, I don't know, somebody have to win, no? But what is a censorship is when you involve the law, when you involve the police, when the police arrive to say, take out all your shit of this place. And this is very serious, and this happened, to me only happened once, which is in Ciudad Juárez, during the submission piece, and I hope never happens again. But what we frequently talk as repression, sometimes is nothing else but the results of the artwork in the reality. So you cannot wait everybody clapping hands. Sometimes the people will throw you tomatoes, no?
And can you tell us about what happened exactly with submission? Because when we spoke earlier, we looked at the video. It's the aerial journey. It's the Palabra de Fuego. And you said that indeed the project was partially unrealized. Can you tell us?
See, it was partially unrealized, but this is the reality of that project exists, no? I don't feel that I did nothing because this project was 5 months there, no? The fight was to put it on fire, to put the submission on fire. For sure you need here in any country is a legislation. And once we get all the legislation, we get all the permits. The question was no, let's go. And I sent, and I was still in my studio. I didn't went to the area, but the people who was working with me, they were thrown out to the space. And this is something that I call repression, no? or censorship. This is censorship.